This video is to help you explain the MAP Student Progress Report to parents and your students during parent-teacher conferences. First, we're just going to look at the overall structure of a student progress report. You will see on the front page of the report both the mathematics and reading scores, and then on the back of the report you'll see the language scores as well. They're just shown on the side here in this image, but they would be on the back of the paper that you'll be receiving. For each of the different test areas, there is a graphical representation of the student progress as well as a table showing the actual numbers for student progress. So I'm going to start with the graph. First on the graph, I want to point out what the different axes of the graph are. So vertical axis has these numbers on the side, which really aren't helpful to parents or teachers for that matter. They are just numbers that the MAP testing service will add each year to show the growth over time. So it's not like a percentage. It's not a number out of so many points. Again, it's not really even valuable for us to think about the raw numbers as much as how they change over time. The horizontal axis tells you what season the test was taken in. So FA represents fall and 17 represents the year 2017. You can also see there's winter, spring, and summer represented as seasons. APIS tests students with the MAP test using both the fall and the spring seasons. So you'll see data points for multiple seasons for students who have been here for a while. Okay, the other part of the graph that stands out is that there are two lines. There's a blue line and a yellow line. So the blue line represents the student's actual score each year, and you can see how it changes over time. So that one is plotted out pretty straightforward with this little dashed part at the end that represents the projected score into the future. So if the student continues this trend of growth, this is where we would expect to see their scores in the future. The yellow line is what's labeled as the norm grade level mean RIT. Basically, that is the average score for other students around the world who took that same test in that season. So you can see that this particular student is above average for both mathematics and reading compared to those norm grade level means. In the box to the right, you're going to see the same trends, but it's not shown in graphical form. So this box over here also has those RIT numbers, which again are not very valuable for parents, so I wouldn't spend a lot of time talking about those. What might be more interesting to parents is the percentile range. So the percent that's in bold here in the middle tells us that this student in fall of 2019 performed better than 97% of the other students worldwide who took this test. And you can see again over time the students' growth in this area from winter of 2013 to the most recent test. The last thing that I'd like to point out to you that's associated with each of these different reading tests, these different tests, is down here on the reading test. If we'll take a look at that real quick, because we can see it better down here. There are these goal areas. They are also in the math test and the language test, but we're just going to look at the reading one for now. So, for example, one of the goal areas for reading is literary text, key ideas and details. So this is like a little subgroup under the big reading score. So MAP has broken down that larger score into these smaller little groups so we can really see where the student is excelling and maybe where they need to work a little harder. So this student in particular, one of his lowest areas was vocabulary, acquisition and use. So if you're talking to parents who have questions about, what can my child do to improve their learning, to improve their score, you can target those lower areas and say, they can work on vocabulary by reading more texts at a higher level, something along those lines. So you can be prepared for those types of questions and conversations by examining those little goal performance areas as well. Now I'd like to go through some of the more strange trends you might see in student data in case parents have questions about these. One of the trends you might see, in particular a lot of elementary students, is a summer drop in scores. So between the spring of 2019 and the fall of 2019, the students' scores may have gotten lower. You can assure parents that this is common. It happens to students in the summer quite often. And by being in school now and hopefully throughout the year, they'll not only be catching up to where they were in the spring when they left, but also improving those scores as well. So you can talk about that process. Additionally, it might be a good opportunity to talk to parents about some reading maybe they'd like to do with their children over the summer to keep practicing some of those skills, or some math games they could play to work on some of the math topics that maybe they're lower in. So that is a common trend, as I said, in the elementary. In the high school, this is another trend you might see, is a dip in the middle of the school year. And it is possible that the student, is losing some skills in those areas, but the more likely explanation is that this high school student just didn't try very hard on that particular day when they took that exam. You can see that this student improved in the fall of 2019. So perhaps he took the exam a little more seriously in the fall than he did the spring previously. So in all of these tests, it's really valuable to talk to parents about the overall trend in the lines so they don't get concerned about one test on one day, but instead look at the overall growth for that student over time. Here's another kind of strange looking trend you might see. This will appear in a student who is either a second grade student, so they haven't taken the MAP test before, or a new student because they haven't had the MAP test at APIS before. So as you can see, they only have one data point to compare and one data point that represents what their score was. But coming out of their score data point is a projection line. So again, the MAP test is predicting growth for that student over time. However, we don't have any more data than that, so we can't give them a line like you saw in the other ones, a blue line or a yellow line to show growth over time. And then one final kind of strange thing you might see in the data is students not having test data for a particular term. So this student, for example, the last time she took the math test was in the spring of 2018. That means she did not take or did not finish the math test in the fall of 2019. So just something to be aware of, that they might not have all the most recent data, and therefore she doesn't have one of those dashed blue lines that would show the trend over time. Instead, it's just a solid line with no trend predicted. I hope this helps understand the progress reports a little bit more. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask.